We've titled this video, The Truth About L Arginine, for a specific reason. As public awareness of the benefits of nitric oxide for improving cardiovascular health continue to grow, there is also a growing competition amongst nitric oxide supplement manufacturers. This competition has led to some misleading statements about the role L Arginine plays in the production of nitric oxide and your overall health and wellness. Here are 3 examples. In an email by Dr. Nan Catherine Fuchs, she makes the following statement in her title and subtitle, quote, "Boost your nitric oxide levels with L Arginine, right? Wrong. Here is why arginine is nearly useless for people over 40. This email directly promoted a product called CircO2, which uses a nitrate-nitrite pathway with L-citrulline for the creation of nitric oxide. So I visited the FAQ page for CircO2 and observed the following question, quote, "Does CircO2 contain L Arginine?" Answer, no, it doesn't. L Arginine is a semi-essential amino acid that can help the body produce nitric oxide, but supplementation doesn't work in all people, especially those over 40, that need it the most. CircO2 accesses a different nitric oxide pathway in the body that works for all age groups and levels of cardiovascular health. End of quote. Now, the nitric oxide pathway of CircO2 is modeled after the same pathway promoted by Neo40. And the same issue about the importance of L Arginine, especially in people over the age of 40, continues to surface. Here is a direct quote from Susie Cohan, who brands herself as America's pharmacist. Quote, "Many people associate L Arginine with nitric oxide, but in fact it is the L Arginine pathway that becomes dysfunctional with age. Therefore, L Arginine supplementation often does not work in adults over 40. However, it can be effective in young healthy individuals with functional endothelial function. My point is that people with endothelial dysfunction are by definition unable to convert L Arginine to nitric oxide. L Arginine should not be recommended following acute myocardial infarction, heart attack, that is. Furthermore, supplementing L Arginine to promote nitric oxide production in people with risk factors for heart disease such as smoking, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sedentary lifestyle, and history of heart disease does not normally work." End of quote. Wow. Given this information, you would think that L Arginine is dangerous and ineffective. Yet the 1998 Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to 3 American researchers who discovered how the endothelium, which is a tissue that lines all of our cardiovascular system, converts the semi-essential amino acid L Arginine into nitric oxide. One of these Nobel laureates is Dr. Louis J. Ignarro, who wrote a national bestseller entitled No More Heart Disease. It's still the best book in the market to help you understand the power of nitric oxide to improve circulation and the ability of the endothelium to produce it when properly nourished. So let's start with the basics so that you can understand this issue by addressing the 3 key components in this health debate and the misinformation that is being promoted as fact. Endothelium, nitric oxide, L Arginine. Your endothelium is only 1 cell thick, and it lines all of your vascular system. The inside of your heart is lined by the endothelium. All your arteries and veins, arterioles and venules are lined by this 1 cell thick tissue. Your capillaries are just extensions of the endothelium. It's the largest secreting tissue in your body, and one of its functions is to convert L Arginine into nitric oxide through an enzymatic process. Before we look at the importance of L Arginine, let's first understand nitric oxide. Outside your body, it's considered a pollutant, but inside your body, nitric oxide acts as a signaling molecule. All this means is that it causes something else to occur. For example, in the bloodstream, nitric oxide has 3 specific properties. First, it causes the smooth muscle of the vascular wall to relax. This results in vasodilation, allowing for greater blood flow into a tissue or organ. This typically helps bring blood pressure back into a normal range. For those with high blood pressure, this can be a natural way to address this cardiovascular concern. Second, Nitric oxide helps to prevent blood platelet cells from sticking together, so it naturally prevents strokes and heart attacks. Third, nitric oxide initiates reparative mechanisms that help heal damage done to the endothelium to help maintain its ability to properly produce nitric oxide. This reparative process also prevents plaque formations and calcification, which accounts for approximately 74% of all cardiovascular disease. The following picture will help you better understand this disease process. As you can see, in our 20s and 30s, we typically have a healthy endothelium which produces a beneficial amount of nitric oxide. But as we age, damage occurs to the endothelium, resulting in inflammation, leading to plaque formation and calcification. High blood pressure, high sugar levels, LDL or bad cholesterol, and nicotine all directly damage the endothelium. As this picture shows, this damage has a detrimental effect on your vascular system, leading to significantly less nitric oxide production while increasing your risk for strokes and heart attacks as well as other cardiovascular health concerns. Unless you're actively nourishing the endothelium to enhance its ability to properly produce nitric oxide, this damage will continue to occur. So the real question is, how can you best nourish the endothelium so that nitric oxide can initiate the reparative mechanisms needed to help maintain a healthy vascular system? This is where the semi-essential amino acid L arginine comes in. L arginine is now classified as a semi-essential amino acid. What this means is that your body can produce its own L arginine, but not in high enough quantities to maintain optimal health. Thus, you need an outside source. This need for an outside source has given rise to the different nitric oxide supplements in the marketplace. Here's a picture of the metabolic pathway for the creation of nitric oxide. While this can be confusing to look at, we want to focus on just a couple of items. First is L arginine. When L arginine is present, the enzymatic pathway of the endothelium can work to properly create nitric oxide. Second is the need for the amino acid L-citrulline. When L-citrulline is present, it can take the spin-off molecules of nitric oxide production and reform additional L arginine to help the endothelium continue its production of nitric oxide. Thus, the combination of L arginine and L-citrulline is the best method for long-term production of nitric oxide regardless of your age. It's not just L arginine or just L-citrulline. Rather, it's the proper combination of both of these amino acids that achieve the best results. As Nobel laureate Dr. Louis J. Ignarro notes in the introduction to his book No More Heart Disease, quote, "It is the synergy between the L arginine in a large enough dose, the L-citrulline, and the key antioxidants that creates dramatic increases in your body's nitric oxide production. Without the proper combination of these nutrients, which so many other programs lack, you will receive little to no benefit from nitric oxide therapy." End of quote. Now let's go back to L arginine because it plays a critical role in other metabolic pathways. If the enzymes of the endothelium don't use L arginine for the creation of nitric oxide, then L arginine is used to fuel other metabolic pathways needed for optimal health. Let's start on the right and work our way to the left. The protein synthesis pathway. This is foundational to life. Without the ability to properly produce proteins from the building blocks called amino acids, most biological functions would stop. L arginine plays a critical role in the formation of proteins. The nitric oxide citrulline pathway. We've already spent time looking at this pathway and we'll come back to it in a little bit. The creatine pathway. According to the Mayo Clinic, quote, approximately 95% of the body's total creatine content is located in skeletal muscles, end of quote. Creatine is important for enhanced muscle mass and strength, but it also plays a role in congestive heart failure. Again, according to the Mayo Clinic, quote, patients with chronic heart failure have low levels of creatine in their hearts. Several studies report that creatine supplements may improve heart muscle strength, body weight, and endurance in patients with heart failure, end of quote. So this metabolic pathway of converting L-arginine into creatine has tremendous value for muscle strength, endurance, and heart health. The urea and ornithine pathway. This pathway is absolutely critical to your well-being. Urea is the major end product of nitrogen metabolism and is used to rid your body of ammonia waste products. Ammonia is toxic, even in small amounts, and this conversion of ammonia to urea occurs in the liver. Once urea is formed, then it's transported to the kidneys for excretion. One of the spin-offs of the urea cycle is an amino acid called ornithine. Ornithine promotes good liver function, detoxification, the release of growth hormones that aid in metabolizing excess fat, and seems to boost the body's immune system to counter bacteria, viruses, and tumor cells. The augmentin pathway. Augmentin is a byproduct of L-arginine metabolism and plays some very interesting roles in your body. First, it helps protect the enzymatic pathway the endothelium uses to create nitric oxide. Second, it inhibits those enzymes that break down nitric oxide. Thus, it aids in the production and protection of nitric oxide. Additionally, augmentin helps stimulate the release of pituitary hormones and is believed to have strong neuroprotective effects, leading to improved neurotransmission and brain health. This enhances your sense of well-being. The proline pathway. One metabolic pathway not shown in the previous slide, but shown in this slide, is the creation of proline. This non-essential amino acid is responsible for tissue repair, collagen formation, the prevention of arteriosclerosis or hardening of the arteries, and helps with blood pressure maintenance. As you can see, the semi-essential amino acid L-arginine is critical to your overall health of your body, as well as needed for the proper production of nitric oxide. Individuals who tell you that L-arginine is bad for you or dangerous to your health, especially if you're over the age of 40, either don't understand this semi-essential amino acid or have another agenda. Now, let's go back to Susie Cohan's earlier statement, which I placed on the screen. Quote, L-arginine should not be recommended following acute myocardial infarction, heart attack that is. End of quote. Most people who make this statement are usually referencing the Johns Hopkins study in which L-arginine HCl was used for post-heart attack patients. These patients were split into two groups. One group got a placebo, and the other group consumed 9 grams of L-arginine HCl on a daily basis. They stopped the study early because the group getting the L-arginine HCl had more subsequent heart attacks when compared to the placebo group. The conclusion was that L-arginine is bad for people who have already had a heart attack. Yet, when you read Dr. Ignaro's book, No More Heart Disease, he makes the following statement on page 31 regarding nitric oxide and heart attacks. Quote, remember, nitric oxide can greatly diminish your chances of having a second attack. So even if you are a cardiac patient, you can help yourself. End of quote. So how do we reconcile these opposing views? Well, we need to examine the Johns Hopkins study. They used a synthetic form of L-arginine. To boost absorption, this synthetic form of L-arginine used a carrier molecule called HCl, or hydrochloride. Once absorbed into the bloodstream, hydrochloride is cleaved off of the L-arginine. By itself, HCl upsets the balance of potassium in the bloodstream. This is significant. For a muscle to contract, sodium is needed. For a muscle to relax, potassium is needed. For a person with a heart condition, especially one that has already had a heart attack, you do not want to be lowering their potassium levels because once the heart contracts, it might not have enough potassium to allow for proper relaxation, which can trigger another heart attack. So the cause of the additional heart attacks in the Johns Hopkins study is most likely due to hydrochloride and not L-arginine. To drive this point home, here is a quote from the muscle physiology page of the University of California, San Diego. Quote, as an interesting side note, this is the mechanism by which potassium chloride is used to induce cardiac arrest. By eliminating the potassium concentration gradient, the depolarized cardiac muscle cells are unable to repolarize for their next beat. End of quote. As you can see, the proper choice of L Arginine is critical to your overall health, and the proper combination of L Arginine with L citrulline provides the optimal production of nitric oxide. Once this nitric oxide is properly produced, then it can trigger the reparative mechanisms needed to heal damage done to the endothelium. This healing process reverses endothelial cell dysfunction, leading to even higher amounts of nitric oxide. The bottom line to all of this is improved circulation. Now, we need to address one more issue regarding nitric oxide production. Companies like Neo40 and Circ-O2 use a combination of L-citrulline and a nitrate-nitrite pathway for the production of nitric oxide. We've already seen that L-citrulline is beneficial in the production of nitric oxide. So what about this nitrate-nitrite alternative pathway? According to the Ohio Department of Health, 70% of the nitrate consumed in a typical diet comes from vegetables like cauliflower, broccoli, spinach, and root vegetables like beets and turnips. Meat and meat products that contain sodium nitrate become another source. The following diagram helps you better understand what happens to these nitrates once they enter your system. First, the nitrate must be converted to nitrite. Once converted to nitrite, then the body can use this nitrite to produce nitric oxide. However, unlike the L-arginine, L-citrulline metabolic cycle that can continue to produce large amounts of nitric oxide, this nitrate-nitrite cycle has two concerns. First, to reform nitrite, the nitric oxide must be converted to nitrous oxide. This process removes nitric oxide from your system. Second, as this metabolic pathway continues, ammonia is needed to convert these molecules back to nitrite to start this process over. Ammonia is toxic to your system, so your body is continuously working to rid itself of ammonia. Because of these two factors, the nitrate-nitrite pathway for the production of nitric oxide is not as effective or efficient. As Nobel laureate Dr. Louis J. Ignarro points out in his book No More Heart Disease, quote, the manufacture of nitric oxide takes place mainly in the endothelium, which you recall is the layer of cells lining the interior surface of blood vessels, end of quote. While there are other novel ways to produce nitric oxide, if you really want to improve your cardiovascular health with this molecule, then you need to properly nourish your endothelium with the two amino acids it needs. These amino acids are L-arginine and L-citrulline. While you can include other nutrients to enhance this production, the foundation will always be the proper blend of L-arginine and L-citrulline. Restoring the health of your endothelium will enhance this process, leading to significant improvements in your cardiovascular system, and this works for all age groups. And as we've seen from the Johns Hopkins study, the quality and purity of the L-arginine makes a significant difference. Now, one final observation in this debate on which nitric oxide pathway is best for you. Companies that recommend the nitrate-nitrite pathway many times recommend using a test strip to measure the production of nitric oxide. These test strips do not measure nitric oxide levels. What they measure are nitrite levels in your saliva. One such test strip is the Berkeley test strip. Here are two statements from their FAQ page. Quote, what does the nitric oxide test strip measure? Answer, nitric oxide test strips are based on the amount of a metabolite for nitric oxide. The metabolite, nitrite, is a well-accepted biomarker for nitric oxide and a relatively stable molecule that is both a source and byproduct of nitric oxide. Can my levels be inaccurate? Yes. Although it is fair to say that saliva nitrite levels provide a relatively predictable measurement of nitric oxide levels in our body, the readings can be falsely low or high in some instances, end of quote. Thus, these types of test strips are only measuring nitrite levels in your saliva. Can nitrites produce nitric oxide? Yes, we've already seen that the nitrate-nitrite pathway can produce nitric oxide, but these test strips are incorrectly used to determine nitric oxide levels. If you use a proper combination of L arginine with L-citrulline to fuel the enzymatic pathway of the endothelium to produce therapeutic levels of nitric oxide, then this will not show up on these test strips because this pathway doesn't create nitrites in your body. These test strips are completely inaccurate for truly determining nitric oxide levels in your bloodstream. All they do is measure nitrite levels in your saliva, not nitric oxide levels in your bloodstream. We hope this information will be helpful to you as you make your decisions about which nitric oxide supplement you should choose. While there are several nitric oxide pathways, the best will always be the proper combination of L arginine with L-citrulline. Then it becomes a decision about the quality and purity of the L arginine and L-citrulline plus other ingredients, all designed to properly nourish the largest secreting tissue in your body, which is the endothelium. If you have any questions about the content of this material, then please directly contact me at 1-800-966-3012. Our goal is to help people understand the truth about L arginine so that they can properly harness the benefits of nitric oxide production.